Again, see if this will get loading here. All right, so a couple things tonight. We'll go over the midterm long answer questions if you want. If you don't care, then that's fine. But if you're interested, happy to go over those for you. Hopefully that went well enough for you and wasn't a big deal. Just a little chance to do an official assessment there. This week we're going to pick up file I/O. We're not going to do everything in chapter 15. We're going to stick to text-based files. If you do continue on and take 2151, object-oriented programming in Java, we'll get into the rest of that and look at binary type files. They're much more interesting, a little more flexible in terms of what they can store, and definitely more efficient at what they store, but they're trickier. So we save them for next semester. And then we'll talk about our fourth and final individual project tonight. And then next week we'll come back, we'll talk a little bit about exceptions. We're not going to do a whole lot about exceptions. Again, that's another topic you pick up more on next semester as well. But want to show you when we write classes what we can do with exceptions. Just so that you know this is generally what we do with them. And then we'll have lots of time to work on project 4. And then the week after that, before Thanksgiving, we'll get started with Java FX from chapter 17, and we'll introduce the final project. We're off for a week for Thanksgiving. You don't have to do anything. No pressure there. Enjoy the whole week off or get caught up on anything else you might be working on. When we come back on 11:30, I'll show more stuff from Java FX, just some supplemental example things, other cool things you can do with Java FX that aren't in the textbook. And then on 12:07, I'll shut up. It's a chance for you folks to work on the final project. Again, the idea is to do this in pairs, but we're still in the middle of a global pandemic. So if you're not comfortable working in pairs, that's perfectly fine if you want to do it individually. But if you want to do it in pairs, it's a good chance to work together on that. Or ask me questions. We got the whole night to sit and work on that. And then on December 14th, it's actually a couple weeks from now, right? Is that 6 weeks? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks from tonight, we'll present our final projects. Anybody who's remote will hop on. We can do a Zoom session instead of Twitch, so we can actually see them present. And individuals or pairs will present their final project, play the little game, show off the different features that work, and I grade it on the spot based on whether or not you got the feature working or not, which is generally pretty straightforward. And it's a lot of fun because everyone designs it a little bit differently when we build out our games, right? Not everyone puts menus and buttons and labels and things in the exact same spot, which is part of designing user interfaces. So all sorts of fun there. And then don't forget that final project is a huge portion of your grade, right? That's essentially the capstone. So if you can't do it, you're not going to pass the class, right? The idea is that if you've done everything in the class, you can do the final project and you'll be great. So it's 40% overall of the grade here. So that was huge. That's why we've got a whole month to work on it. And we've got time the rest of the night. So Java FX, again, we're not going to take the whole night. More Java FX, we're not going to take the whole night. So we've got like a half, and an entire session worth of in-class time to work on it, in addition to all the homework time that you're putting in every week. So that's the goal. I'd love it when everyone gets 100% on the final project. That makes me super happy, because generally that means we had a pretty decent semester and people are doing well. So, all right. Oh, I forgot to grab the other laptop. Let me hop on chat, my phone here, if anyone's around. Go. Let's see. No one in chat right now. That's fine. Nope, not that. There. Reconnect. Let's see if I can get this to work here. Maybe. Just thinking about it. Network error, of course. Oh, come on. It's 2021. And won't even connect. It's all right, technology's hard. Okay, I'm in. Let me just make sure I can send a test. Hey, look at that. It's working. All right, cool. So do you want to talk about the midterm questions first, or do you just want to skip that and get into the file stuff? I can do anything. I can give you fake money, yes. You didn't ask for US dollars, right? So you want $1,000,000 Shroot bucks? All right, I Boogie, L Boogie, you want to look at the midterm question. So sure, they're the first person to vote. So we'll talk about that. I think we even have a midterm review project, right? A midterm review from someone. Oh, I guess it's a little old, but we can, I think we'll reuse that same project. Oh, where's our midterm review? Let's open that one up. Over to D2L, I'll go grab the midterm. All right. I wasn't going to go over the quiz style questions. They're just a random out of the test bank. If you have questions about specific ones, again, I'll be looking at them. I know the short answer ones were funny. I'm going to look at all the midterms when I get to grading those for you folks. But the long answer ones were the more interesting ones, right? So our loop about asking them to enter items they want to buy to a shopping list, continue allowing them to enter items until they're done. So this is some sort of loop with a sentinel value, right? Whether or not we're asking them what they want to buy, or enter the word quit to stop using a sentinel value, or do you have more items to enter, yes or no? And continuing on if they enter yes, or Y or N or something. Either way is perfectly fine, depending on which way you wanted to do it. No points off either style there. But which way do you want to do it? As a sentinel value loop, or just like a yes, no, more items loop? A yes, no? Okay, so we'll start I don't know, more items equals a Y here. Quote Y. And we'll say while more items dot equals ignoring case Y. We want to keep on doing something. So we'll say enter an item to add to your shopping list.
And you have to make something to like actually add the item?
Nope. Nope, just ask them. Oh, okay. Yeah, putting them in an array list is great. It actually put them somewhere, but this was just enter what they want. Yeah, an array list would be cool, but there's didn't necessarily need to store it all. So then we'll get some input from them. Again, we're not really going to do anything with it, so we can just throw it away after, but equals a new scanner given system.in. So we'll do keyboard.next line. And we don't even really need to store it anywhere. If we, string item or something is that. Sure. If we were adding it to an array list or an array, we could put it in there. Again, array is not really a good choice for this because we don't know how many items are on the shopping list. So when you size an array, I'd have to say 10 things. And if you wanted to buy more than 10 things, you're out of luck. Or I could say like 100 things. And if you only bought 12 things on your list, we wasted a bunch of space. So arrays, again, are, they're sad. Array lists are much more flexible and just fantastic. Sure, and they'll ask them if they have more items. So we can say more items, or prompt them first, right? Do you have more items to add to your list? And again, tell them, suggest a Y or an N or something, right? It'd be helpful so they know what they're looking for. And then my more items will equal the keyboard.nextLine. And if they've entered yes, then the loop goes and runs again. Anything other than a Y, and we stop. Look at that, we already had a scanner. I can get rid of that line. Easy. Okay, or if you want to do the sentinel style, like, hey, enter an item or stop or quit, because I don't think there's a thing you can buy called quit or stop. I don't know. Maybe you could buy a stop sign or something, but you could say, hey, enter something or stop to be all done. Just do it in one entry piece here, is all. Okay, that would make sense for the loop. Just a quick little loop question. All right, write a method sum of even numbers up to n, int number, that returns the sum of all even numbers from 1 to n, including the number. All right, so a little method here. So we'll go add a method, public static void sum of even numbers up to n, given an int for number. So we need an integer to store the sum, right? And then we can either do a while loop or a for loop. A for loop is probably easier here. So we want to say for int, I don't know, value is, now we could start at 0, but adding 0, like 0 is not even, so we don't really care. So the easier way to go about it here is to start at 2, and say value is less than or equal to the number, right? Because we want to include the number, that n. So if we're equal to, it's perfectly fine. And then the easier way to do it here, you could say value plus equal 2. You could add 2 to value instead of going plus plus, doing 1 at a time, and then having to check, hey, is the number even? Is the number even? Is the number even? That's a shortcut. I don't imagine most people went for that shortcut, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, so that I'll copy that line and comment it out here. That's my quick line here. So what most people probably did is they started off at 0, and then they just did plus plus. And there's nothing wrong with that either. And they could say, hey, if the value modulus 2 is 0, right, that means we can divide out all the 2's. It's an even number, and we'll take our sum plus equal 0, plus equal to value. Right? If we went this route and added 2 every time, we don't need to check, because I know it's always an even number. I started at 2 and I'm only adding 2, so I know I'm only getting the evens. So you can save an if check if you do this shortcut loop. Take your shortcut. Either way is fine. Then we're done. We return sum. Oops, this should be not a void, an int. Here. Apollo. So I'll be working on it throughout the week, getting those ones scored for you. It's been a little rough. I think I'm behind on the other project, right? I don't think I got all your project 3s. What was project 3 do? I'm so confused. Hang on, we'll do this one and I'll come back. I'm behind. My grandmother's funeral was last week, so it kind of threw off my whole week, unfortunately. But so be working on getting caught back up. So it should be soon for those. All right, and our last one, a class talking stuffed animal that has an attribute for name, color, sound to make, and battery has power. Write a constructor that accepts values for name, color, sound to make. Have it set battery has power to true. Add method for name, or get methods for name, color, battery has power. Add a method change battery with such the attribute battery has power to true. And then add a method squeeze that generates a random number 1 to 10. If the number's 1, set battery has power to false. Then, if the battery has power, return the sound to make or an empty string. So squeeze is going to return either the sound or empty if the battery had power, and a 1 in 10 chance that your battery died. Here, for your poor little talking stuffed animal. We got a couple methods to make here. So we're going to come to our package and add a new class. So talking stuffed animal. Right, and it's going to have name, color, sound to make, and battery has power. So a couple attributes here. So we had a private string for name, private string for color, private string for sound to make, and a private boolean for battery has power. And that's either true or false. Right? You either have power or you don't. Okay, great. So now we need to add a constructor. And our constructor should accept name, color, and sound to make, right? Name, color, sound to make, and it should set battery has power to true. So we're just always assuming you put brand new batteries in this toy here. So we take a name, color, sound to make, and we set our battery has power to true. Okay? Then we're going to have get methods for name, color, battery has power. So I guess we don't have a get for sound to make. Sure, that's fine. So we'll insert getters here for everything but sound to make. Because the only way you get the sound out is when you squeeze it, right? Then we have a void method for change battery. Right? Change battery sets my battery has power to true. And then a squeeze method, public string for squeeze. First, we need a random number 1 to 10. So random equals a new random. And then in some number, let's add our import here. And import random.nextInt. And we wanted 1 to 10. We go 10 will give me 0 to 9, plus 1 will give me 1 to 10. Right? Otherwise, you get 0 and you don't get 10. If you didn't add the plus 1, I don't care too much. It's not that big of a deal. Right? If you got the rest of the function, fine. I don't really care if you could use random like that. But if you were checking for 10, you would never have gotten 10 this route here. So because we were checking for 1, yeah, you would have generated a 1 possibly. Right? Then we said if number is equal to 1, battery has power is false. We ran out of battery. Then we need to check if battery has power. Now, again, a lot of people will say if battery has power equals true. This is redundant, right? It already is true or false. You don't need to say does true equal true. You can just say if this Boolean, because it's already a true or false. So if it has power, we're going to return the sound to make. Otherwise, right, if you don't return, technically you can have an else, but that's redundant as well. We don't even need an else. We can just return an empty string. We ran out of power. We just, no noise at all. Yeah, thanks, Malo. All right, give that a little format. Clean that up. So there's squeeze, change battery, the get methods. Right, I think we got it all here for our class, talking stuff down. Well, this one was definitely slightly more involved in this loop question, right? I mean, was that 48 or so lines? But, you know, we wrote a couple of them. We wrote squeeze and we wrote change battery. It's like a one-liner. So, you know, a couple more lines of code than that loop, but not too bad. All right, questions, thoughts, or concerns? Did okay? All right, cool. Let me commit that to GitHub then before I forget. Let's do 1500. Go. That's midterm answers. Did I not? Did this one not get saved? Midterm review. Save. There it goes. Yeah, okay, now it changed. So I didn't save, because I never hit run. So when you hit run, it automatically saves your files. Usually I don't save them by hand. All right, commit and push.
You don't do the phone and control S.
You know, not as often, because like every time I hit run, it saves for me. So I'm not too concerned about that even in an IDE usually. Other tools I'm control S all the time, but.
I have like a 601 Notepad style, and then it corrupted, and then I was like,
Oh.
My computer just crashed, and then I was just like, I saved at 300.
That's sad. Yeah, the online tools for stuff like that are so nice, because like they'll just save automatically the Word documents, Word Online or Google Docs Online. It's always saving for you. You can redo, like, it's unlimited history essentially. That stuff is so amazing. I do like the power of Notepad though. If Notepad's open and you hit shut down, your computer won't shut down. Like, Notepad is open. Like, it's the dumbest little tool, but it keeps your computer from shutting down. Yeah. Google Docs is the best IDE. Oh, Paulo, you make me sad. Make me sad. I mean, yes, it's powerful. All right, cool. So we got that. So let's start up a new project here. So we're going to do some file IO examples. Now, I've been bit by this before. If you put a dash in the wrong place, it names, like it puts in periods instead. File IO is like a named thing in Java. So just be careful when you're playing around with stuff like this. Oh, look at that. I have another capital I. That's embarrassing. Probably okay. All right. So finally now we're getting to the point where we can do something with our data that will keep it around longer than when our program is running. Everything we've done up to this point in time will only operate on data that's in memory. Right? When we create a variable, it's stored in memory. When we do arithmetic, it's stored in memory. That's all we can do. When the program stops, all of that goes away. Right? The Java virtual machine tells the operating system, hey, I'm done with memory, you can have it back. And the operating system says, thanks, we got it back. Right? It could never stay around longer. So files is our solution for keeping data around longer, or even interacting with data that's been not having to be typed in while the program's running. Right? A lot of programs don't need someone to open it up and type a bunch of stuff in. Right? You can hand it a file, it can do something with that file. So there's reading from files and there's writing to files. There is a way to do both, but it's awkward and you're going to save it for next semester because it's awkward and we just aren't going to bother with that. So we're going to either open files for reading or we're going to open files for writing. We're not going to do both because we don't need to. Okay? So anytime you're working with files, you do three things. You open it, you read or write it, and then you close it. If you forget to close it, it is going to stay open and can do bad things the next time you try and use it. Now, yes, when Java shuts down, it will automatically close it out for you, but you don't want to rely on your program having to stop to essentially release that file. Otherwise, you've told the computer, hey, I'm still using it, and no one else can go touch it. Or if you try and open it again later in your program, if you're not careful, right, it's just going to block it and it's going to fail and crash pretty hard. So we're always going to open, read or write, and then close. So when we're working with, oh good, my sugar's finally back to where it should be. Real shaky earlier. That was no fun. Let's do 60. This will be fun. I'm going to go up and down, like a roller coaster. All right, so the files we're going to be dealing with, again, are going to be text-based files. That means we can open them up and we can look at them and actually see the contents. The other types of files are considered binary files. A binary file means it has some sort of format that we can't read in the text editor, which is fine. We don't care too much about that. So I'm going to go, just for fun, we're going to open this up and go find where this is. Now, there's no shortcut, which makes me really sad to like open this folder here. But if I come over to my project view and I just hover the mouse over, it tells me, hey, it's C, users, Eric C, documents, GitHubs, CIS 2454. Oh crap, I put it in the wrong spot. All right, let me cancel that. I'm just going to start up a new one. Make sure I put it in the right directory here. File, IO, examples. That's right, I did not check to make sure it was in the right folder here. I'm just going to cheat, do it in this folder here. But we're going to go find that in here. So we're going to go my C drive, users, Eric, documents, GitHub, CIS 1500, file IO examples. So here's the folder where this project is stored. Right? There's this NB project, that's the NetBeans project files. There's the SRC, that's the source, that's where all of our source code goes. Inside of there is another folder for the package, where a package is just a folder in Java. So I look at source files. Let me close out the other one here. Oh, wait, which one's the right one? All right, that's 2454. Let me close that one. Oh, I can delete it. Yes, we'll delete. Okay. Come on. Come on, NetBeans. Right, so I can see inside of here, I have my Java code, file ioexamples.java. Okay, got all the files in here. It also has the build XML and a manifest.mf file. So anything that you're not sure about, you can just say open with. And Notepad is a real basic plain text editor. If you go to more apps, it's probably the easiest one to open with. So this is a text-based file, right? You can actually see the contents of it here. Right? If I start a new file, like a Word file, nope, not a rich text format, Microsoft Word file. I saw the icon, jumped to it. There we go, a Word document, test. And we open this one up in Word. We put something in here, we say test. Right? We can see the text in Word, no problem, because Word knows how to open Word files. But if I were to right-click on it and say, not that one, right-click on this test file and say open with, right-click, there we go, open with Notepad, it looks like nonsense because it's stored in a binary format. So it just takes the actual bits and bytes and writes them out to the file in a way that it knows how to come back and read later. The bits and bytes, when we try and turn them into characters, look like gibberish. Now, there are some actual words in here, like word/websettings.xml. So some of the stuff does translate to characters, right? They actually will store character data somewhere in here, but we don't know the rest of the format of what all this stuff looks like. Right? So that's a binary file. Again, we're not going to bother reading and writing binary files. We're going to stick to text-based files because that way we can open them up and read them, or create our own files and read them as well. It'll make life easy for us. Okay? Yeah, Google Translate. That, it might work. Never tried that on a Word document. Okay, so to open, write, and close our file, then if we want to write a file, it takes a couple steps. Now, it's a little bit tedious here because we have to do a lot of different pieces here. So the easy way to do this is we use something called a print writer. We say print writer, and we'll call it, I don't know, like a file writer equals a new print writer. And we are going to import that package. So print writer comes from java.io. Java.input output is IO, input and output. So reading files in and outputting files. Print writer. And then the print writer constructor here, we can give it the name of a file, like test.txt. Now it's still mad at us because it says an unreported exception, file.found exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown. Now we've talked a little bit about dealing with exceptions so we don't crash. So we want to try this in a try block and catch that exception if it happens. So thankfully NetBeans tells us, yeah, sure, let's do that. Let's surround with a try catch. So we're going to try this and we're going to catch. Don't worry about this logger nonsense. We'll just print. You can actually print out the exception itself. It'll print really nicely, mostly nicely. Like there's a get message. I think is probably the cleanest message here that you can do, but even just printing it here, it should be fine. And most of the time, writing files, we're not going to run into much trouble here because it's just going to write. If you don't have permissions to write the file, it's going to crash. Not too big of a deal because we're working in our project directory, right? When you get out into more of the enterprise world, there's more interesting security and locations, and depending where files are, when you run them and read them and write them, and can cause all sorts of fun stuff. But for us, it should be fine. So this is opening the file, right? This is opening the file. This opens it. Then we're going to read and write from it. So in our case, we're going to write to the file. And then when we're done, we're going to close the file. So before I do anything else, I'm going to remember here to close it. So it's filewriter.close. Just make sure that we tell Java, hey, we're all done with it. I'm fine. You can let go. Tell the operating system we're good with it. We don't need to keep it around anymore. So just in a good habit. There is an easier way of doing this. It sometimes causes more trouble, so we'll stick to the slightly more verbose way of doing it. Open, write, and close. So to write to the file, this works out really nice. You say filewriter dot. It has a couple methods, like print line. We're pretty familiar with print and print line, right? So instead of printing something out to the screen, to the console, we can print to the file here. So I'll say, hi there, file, and we'll print that. Okay, let's give it a run. Done. That was it. Now, we don't actually see anything here, right? Because we didn't print anything to the screen. What we did is we told it to create a file. Now, there's no file here in source. Where it puts it, I believe is build, right? Does it put it in here? No, not even in build. My goodness, where does it put it here? That was too far back. Build. File. Not in test. Where did I put my file? So I think we look at the file view. We can look at it. Oh, yeah, okay, yep. So you see there's a folder named test. It's not actually a folder. When we ran this one, because I'm silly, oh no, I did call it test.txt. I gave it a .txt. Should have the extension. Where did it go? All right, I'm wrong. Where did it go? Put it in. Where did I put my file? Sad, I lost my file. No, nothing in there. Nothing in here. All right, one more time. Let me go back and see. Maybe it actually didn't run. Maybe it's this, that's probably what happened. Probably this compile and save thing. Let me try run one more time. Yeah, it should just go in there. I'm confused why it's not. Now we see our test file. Okay, that's the NetBeans settings. Okay, making me think I'm crazy. So now we see a new file. Look, a test.txt file, and I can open this up. And I can look at it, and I see, hi there, file. And then the cursor is down to the next line, right? Because we put a new line character in there. So you can kind of see my cursor's on the second line. Okay, so we made a file. If I run it again, now you can use the file view. It's a little easier to go find your file. So instead of the project view here, you can go open up the files view, and then you can open up your file inside of NetBeans if you want, which is nice and easy instead of like trying to find the folder and opening up a Notepad. So the file view can be pretty handy for that. instead of the current project because it's not going to show in the project view. So that's test.txt. Now, what's going to happen, though, is every time you use PrintWriter and you say, hey, open a new file, it deletes what's currently in the file, and it's gone. So you got to be a little careful with PrintWriter. We'll delete your old file, if it exists. Okay? So you need to be a little bit careful using PrintWriter here. It's just gone. Okay? But then if we wanted to, we could read the file now. Right? And you can print as many lines as you want, right? We can print writer.print line, second line here, or something. Right? Anything you want to put in is perfectly fine. Print as many things as you want to the file. I think, can I make that a tab here? There we go. I want that as a tab. No, that's not what I wanted. There we go. Here's my file view, so I can open it up, and now I see, hi there, file, second line here, and then empty. Okay, so we can write it. Now, if we wanted to read the file, we have to do a couple things. The file reader, to read a file, you need to hand it a file object. It's a little bit annoying here. So we're going to say, here's my file object. Here's my file to read or something, is a new file. And then we tell the file test.txt. Give it the name of the file to read. And yeah, we'll go add our imports. Great. You can add an import. Then we need to hand this to a reader. Now, it turns out actually one of the easy ways to read, because we're slightly familiar with it, is scanner. The book will show you a different way, and we can talk about that in a little bit here, but I kind of like the scanner example here. We'll call this the file reader equals a new scanner. So if you want to, instead of giving system.in to scanner, we can give it a file object, file to read. And yeah, we'll add our import for scanner, sure. And then it's going to now warn us again, hey, there might be an exception, so let's do a try catch. Nope, that was the wrong thing to pick. I just want the statement. Surround statement with try catch. There we go. I did surround block by mistake. So, and what we're going to get here is this one could happen as an exception really easily if you give it the wrong name of a file. If you try and open something that doesn't exist, this one's going to crash. If you try and write to a file that doesn't exist, it'll make it for you. It says, no problem. Sure, here's a brand new file, right? But when you go to read a file, if that file doesn't exist, bad stuff will happen. So again, we'll just print out the exception. So if I were to like typo this and say, here's like text.tt or something instead of txt, it's going to crash. No, not debug. That's already running. Stop. Okay, just run. And we get, hey, here's a file not found exception, test.tt. The system cannot find the file specified, right? So that was the exception actually happened. It's a file not found exception. We tried to open a file that doesn't exist. So you can be a little careful there. txt, there we go. Now we'll be able to read it. So what we can do with scanner is you can do a couple things, right? We've done this next line before, right? It will grab the entire line and do something with it. So in our case, if we just want to print it, right, we can just print what we read off that next line, what's in the file. And I know there's 2 lines in the file, so I can read 2 things, right? So whatever 2 lines we put up here, we can go print them out. This is silly to write a file and read it right away. We're just kind of looking at our example here. We should be able to get out those 2 lines. Right, hi there, file, second line here, great. And then we need to close it. I forgot to close it. So when we're done, we take our file reader .close, and we close it. So we open the file. This actually isn't even opening it. So this opens the file. This reads the file. And this closes the file. Now, if we're trying to open a file and we don't know exactly how many lines are in it, right? We could do a loop. We could say while file reader dot has next. And has next means there's something else for us to read. Now this is not, I mean, if we're just going to print it out to the screen, sure, we can read an entire file, spit it out to the screen. If we wanted to keep the contents around, we'd probably want to put it into something like an array list, right? And actually store, hey, here's all the contents of the file in an array list that I can go and do something with later. Sure, right? We got options there, but this way we'll read every line out of that file. As long as there's something to read, we'll go read the line. So we get hi there file, second line here, and that was it. There was nothing else in the file. But I could, if I wanted to, go to my file here and add more stuff to it. Third line, here's a blank line, here's another line, more gibberish, more gibberish. As long as I save the file, when I go and run it, oh, actually it's going to overwrite, sorry. If we don't do this, let's comment that out for a second. This one here, comment that out for a second. So if we just go and read a file, right, we get everything that was in the file with this nice little loop. Right? If we go and if we actually rewrite it every time, we're going to lose that contents because our file writer will overwrite what existed there. Right? And we just get those two things. There's a different way if you want to write, if you want to append to a file. Right? We can do a different thing. So instead of print writer, we use, oh geez, it's a file writer. You hand to print writer, right? Or is it this one here? Nope. So we make a file writer object. We're going to import here. File writer. So let me rename this one here print writer, I guess, because that's ugly. Print writer. File writer. File writer. There's a new file writer. And sorry, we're going to do this down here. If you make a file writer, you can give it a print writer. And then you can say, hey, I want append mode. So if you tell it true, it should put us in append mode. Unused element. Is that doing it here? No. Not a Boolean, no? Am I backwards? Might be backwards. File writer, file writer. So what I get for not looking at the PowerPoint while I go have it on my other computer. Usually can cheat. Print writer? Maybe we get print writer the file writer. Test.txt. Okay, I was backwards. So you give the print writer a file writer, and with file writer you can tell it, hey, you want true for append mode. True in append mode. But now it's yelling at me because I'm not catching the exception. There's another exception that can happen. So it's a, which one is that? A IO exception could happen. So I just want to catch an IO exception. So any IO exception could happen here. Add my import for it. Now I want the print writer. That's right. Print writer, print writer, print writer. So if you make a file writer made for writing the files and tell it, hey, I want it in append mode, we can hand that to the print writer. Then the print writer then will append here. So now when I run my file, I'm going to get that stuff added to the end of the file. When it goes to open the file for writing, it puts it at the end. And every time you run it, we're going to see we get 2 more lines and 2 more lines and 2 more lines. Right? We just keep on adding to this file because it's in append mode. We find where the end of it is, and we just keep on writing. Find where the end is and keep on writing. So it's just that remembering the order is kind of obnoxious here. And then the book will add in a third layer of a buffered writer here. So you can have a buffered writer that takes a file writer that takes a print writer. It's a little bit of a mess with all the different options here for doing that. And same for reading. You can use a buffered reader that uses a file reader and things like that. So you can get all sorts of levels around. The reason why that's useful is if your file stays open for a long time, if it's being buffered, Java tries to be smart about it. So reading and writing from files is considered very slow in terms of how fast programs run. Right? Doing things in memory is like that. doing stuff with disk operations, we have to ask the operating system to go do something. The operating system has to go ask the disks to go do something, and the program's waiting and waiting and waiting to be told, yes, I'm done with this operation. So in terms of how, like, amount of time, it's really slow to write stuff to disk. So what we'll try and do is we try and buffer those operations so that every time you write a line, we don't have to go tell the operating system, hey, go write a new line. Hey, go write a new line. Hey, go write a new line, and have all those waits in between. What it does behind the scenes is it creates a buffer and says, okay, every 1,000 characters, I'll go and do a write operation. But if I haven't hit that mark yet, I have room in my buffer, I'm just going to keep telling you you're fine, and eventually I'll go write it to disk, which is a little funky, right? When we're doing stuff like that. So if we were to, instead of doing like this here, let's do a little loop instead. We'll say, we'll make a scanner, keyboard equals new scanner, this one given system in, and we'll say, I don't know, string for line equals something here, and while line dot equals ignore case quit, while not equaling quit, we'll ask him. We'll have a string for the line is, oops, we got to prompt him first, a line to write to the file, or quit, stop. And then we'll get line is keyboard.next line. And if line.equals ignore case, if it's not quit, not that, we'll take our print writer and we'll print line, the line. So it's a little bit obnoxious with the sentinel value because we need to keep checking to see if it's not the one, otherwise we'd write quit at the end of our file. And sure, we'll do it in append mode because why not? But I'll go trim out some of this stuff here. We'll trim some of it there. So we'll ask him, hey, what do you want to enter to the file? What do you want to enter to the file? What do you want to put in there? See if we can give this a run. Horrible naming, yeah, the names are a little rough here. So I don't know, some input here. And if I come back here and I look at my file, it's not written yet, right? The file hasn't been changed because behind the scenes, it's being buffered. Eventually, it gets written. It will always write when we close, right? Closing the file will force it to write everything that's in the buffer. But eventually, we give it enough lines here. I don't remember at what point it is. There's some default value in the buffer here for this that will hit. I think it's 1,000 characters or something really big. So we're probably not going to get it for quite a while, but eventually we should be able to hit that buffer. Nope, come on. Here, we'll just, and that's even super slow. All right, hang on. Let's do this. Let's cheat. Let's do this. Copy that. Copy that. Copy that. Okay, there's a ton of A's. There we go. Ton of A's. Somewhere in here now we're going to get it to write. There it goes. So at some point, right, we filled up the buffer and it says, okay, I've had enough. I'm going to write the file, restart my buffer here behind the scenes. It took a little while to hit that though, right, of writing some gibberish out here. So using the buffered reader, we could be more explicit and have a little more control over how often we want it to write. That's why the book goes into that example. Sometimes it's nice, especially if you're doing reading and writing of a file, you want to have nice control over that. We're going to skip that complex part and worry about that in another time. We're just going to do the basics. And every time you close, right, it'll finish writing out the buffer. Look at that. Even I think it updated again. Cool. So that was fun. So then quit. Great, we stopped. Here we read everything that's in it, right? So 3 times we gave it all those A's. Here, right? What did it even put in there? Line is too long. Please switch to wrap mode to see the whole line. Oh, that's an R setting. Okay, that's NetBeans. That's NetBeans, not us. Our file doesn't have that. So this is cool, right? What's hard to do now is to store dynamic data. Right? If I said, hey, enter a bunch of numbers, and I'm going to save all those numbers, I could write a bunch of numbers to a file, and I can come back and I can read a whole bunch of numbers. Sure, if it's just numbers. But if you like have a mix of here's some text, here's a number, here's some text, here's a number, here's another number, here's another number, here's some more text, we have to know what order it's in order to read it back out. Right? So it can be tricky to save data in text-based files. That's why the binary format's a little easier. There's some shortcuts that just say, hey, if you have a class, spit it out to the file. Super easy. You'll love it next semester when we get into that. Just some really fun little easy ways to store data that's not so tricky. But what we can do, right, if we wanted to, let's steal this talking stuffed animal here. Why not? Talking stuffed animal. I'm just going to go copy it here. So if you hold Control when you drag, it'll copy instead of just move, because I wanted to keep it there. Cool. So we have our talking stuffed animal. Now what we want to do is I need a particular format, right, for writing this out to file. I could either give it an option, like write a method for talking stuffed animal that will generate a string for me, which is probably nice, right? We can use the class to do that. So I can say, hey, here's a public string method, like string, I don't know, get content, I don't know, get stuff, talking stuffed animal. I'm running out of good words here. The better way to do it is to do this override to string, but we haven't talked about that. We'll just do a string. String, we'll call it string for file. Get string for file. And we can return, right? We're going to return our name plus, and how about we do like a comma? Should we do comma separations, or we should do some other special characters that separates us, right? How about like the tilde character? That's a fun one, right? We can separate with a tilde. That's the shift accent over the tab key. And you can pick anything that you don't expect to be in your name or color, right? Because maybe you have a comma in your name. Like if you've named your teddy bear, like something fancy and you like has a formal title, he might have a comma in the name. And then if you do a comma separated stuff, you can get into trouble. So maybe use a funny character here. So we'll do name plus a tilde plus the color plus a tilde plus the sound to make plus a tilde plus the battery has power. Right? So we'll get out a consistent string format here that has tildes in between. Okay? So then if I wanted to write that to the file here, we'll say, hey, let's make a stuffed animal. We already have the scanner here, so we'll ask enter your stuffed animal's name. So string for name equals keyboard.next line. We'll say enter the color of your stuffed animal. I should probably separate these a little bit here. Sure, and a string for color, keyboard.next line, and enter sound your animal makes. Oops. A string for sound is the keyboard.next line. Cool, and then we can make a talking stuffed animal. So talking stuffed animal, my animal with a new talking stuffed animal. And we have to give it those things. Now, again, what was the order? We need to give it name, color, sound. We give it the name, the color, and the sound. Name, comma. There we go. Sound to make. Sound. Sure. Then if I want to write that animal to the file, right, I can take my print writer, and I can print line my animal dot get string for file. Okay, so again, ask them for it, and we'll go do it. Sure. So enter line. We'll just say quit if we want to stop. All right, animal's name. How about what's a good animal name? Stuffed animal name. Fluffy. And Fluffy is white and a sheep. Oh, ba, right? Okay, so we get Fluffy, white, ba, and true, our battery has power. So we've written it to the file. Now, reading it here is going to be a little bit obnoxious because we have all this junk in here. So let's actually get rid of all this junk. I'm going to open up the test file here, and we're going to get rid of all this junk. We'll just have fluffy white bar and true. So let's see, we don't need to write anything else. You know, let's just skip this whole thing here. So we'll skip all of this for a second. We'll comment all that out. Let's go read the file. So instead of doing a read next line, right, if I know that there's going to be a stuffed animal in here, right? I guess maybe if the file's all stuffed animals, we can do that. So we can say a string for, here's the line, is my file reader, next line, next line. Okay, and now we want to split this, right? Do we look at string split? Usually we split strings on the space. We talked about that, talking about strings before. Does that ring any bells? Line.split? No? Okay. So usually when we talk about arrays, we look at splits, because split will give you an array back. So maybe we missed that one. So an easy way to turn a string into an array of strings, right, based on a given character is the split. So I can have a string array of, I don't know, we'll call it the parts, is line.split. We're going to split on, no, line.split. Oh my goodness. Split on the tilde character. Now, this is actually, it can be a regular expression, which is all sorts of weird stuff that is a little awkward, and honestly, almost everyone goes and looks them up every time because they're annoying to read and to follow every time. But split will give you an array here. Now, I know that we have 4 parts, right? We have the name, we have the color, we have the noise, we have the battery has power. So I can make a new stuffed animal here then, right? My talking stuffed animal equals, I don't know, so my new animal equals a new talking stuffed animal. And I can give it my different parts here. So we'll say parts index of 0 is the first one out of the array, right? That's the name. And then parts index of 1 is the color. And then parts index of 2 is the noise that it makes. So it looks like we're just changing the battery every time, essentially here. But sure, we can make that stuffed animal. And then we can print out, how about the my new animal dot squeeze. We'll see if we get the noise out, right? Or maybe the battery dies. We'll try it and see. So we're skipping all the writing stuff. We're just going to open the file, grab this line, turn it into an array where every time it finds a tilde character, it will split. So we'll take the first part, and then the second part, and the third part, and the fourth part, put them into an array of strings. So we get the name, the color, and the noise back out, so we can make a new version of that. So give that a run. We get ba. Cool. We'll do it again. Ba. Do it again. Like 1 in 10, right? We should get nothing back out because it should kill the battery. There we go. We got nothing out. We killed the battery. Right? So we can read the contents of a file if we know the order that they're in the file. It's a little bit annoying, right? If we had to save a whole bunch of data to the file, right? Because we have to know exactly what's there. But you can do that. You can say, okay, the first thing will be this number, the next thing will be this thing, the next thing will be this thing. Or we can take instances of a class and like turn them into some sort of string format. This is okay. There's better ways to do this, but that's okay. But we won't about that for now. Right, and the better way is using that binary format where it just takes the class and spits it out. It's super easy. It's really cool. But again, it's a little trickier. So just more steps. More steps for reading and writing and doing all that sorts of that fun stuff here. So sure, we could like, hey, do you have more stuffed animals on your bed? And keep on telling me if you have more stuffed animals on your bed. Okay, what's your stuffed animal? You have a Fluffy Junior, right? Or you maybe, I don't know. I used to have Beanie Babies because I'm that old. I'd have Beanie Babies all over. They are not worth a lot of money anymore, though. Which is, that was the big craze for a while. People thought that would be a good way to make money off these collectible things because people are crazy, right? Weirdly, though, my Magic the Gathering cards are worth money. So, not the Beanie Babies, but sure, Magic the Gathering cards, yeah. All right, we've been talking for a while here now. I got a little after 7. Why don't we take a break? We'll come back and we'll look at some of the book examples to get more into how their approach. Again, they don't bother with the scanner for reading. That's fine. There's other ways to read. Not too big of a deal. And we can go from there, okay? So So I'll throw some music on. We'll talk about the rest of file reading and writing using the book methods, and then we'll talk about the last individual project, and then we'll have some time to work on it. All right, welcome on back. Let's talk about more file I/O examples here. All right, get out of the preview. Now, I think, did I put the textbook files out here for you folks in content? Or did I just tell you you can go download them from Rubric? I just put the slides out there. So there's a bunch of, like, all of his example stuff is available for download as well. Let's see. Got them out here. Programming. All of his projects are out here, which is really cool in like NetBeans format already, ready to go. Here's their file cleaner. No? Is that not? Should have been in here. Projects. NetBeans. That's a solution. I don't think that's right. It's file cleaner. We want file cleaner. Countries. So like we can open up some of these to see some of his examples. It might be easier to just open it in NetBeans. What do you think? Instead of trying to build our own here. I'll grab this one. And we're just going to take a look at some of the ways that he goes about doing the file input and output. Default package. Come on, Mr. Gaddis. Or no. Murrock, Mr. Murrock. Don't use that. So you can use a buffered reader that is given a file reader given a file. Again, it's like this, you give this thing to this thing to this thing, if you want. So what we did was we took a file and we handed it to scanner. And then if you want append mode, we took a file writer, we handed it to print writer. If you don't care about append mode, you can just go right to print writer. Sure. But in this case, given an array list of strings is what we're going to return, we can get the countries out of our file here. So we make an array list, go read them all. So in his case, he's saying, hey, read a line, and if it's not null, keep on going, reading more lines. Sure, we use that as long as we have next, because scanner had this has next option here with our buffered reader. We don't have that, so it's in dot for our buffered reader. In dot. All you can do is read. So when you get to null here, it had nothing left to read. It's done reading. So if you're using the buffered reader, you just check, hey, as long as it's not null, we'll go and do this. Right? When we're done, we can return that array list. Eventually, there might be an exception, and then we just return a null, which is kind of ugly, but that's fine. And then to save our files, he uses a file writer handed to a buffered writer, handed to a print writer. Again, if you want the buffered writer so you have control over buffering, great. We don't, and he never even uses any of the defaults anyway. So we took a file writer and handed it to print writer. If we wanted append mode, you can still do file writer handed to print writer without that append mode. So like there was no comma true here for the file writer. It was fine, and he just prints each country as this each string in the country's array list here and prints it out to file. And then to see if the files already existed, you can go if it does not exist. So the other cool thing you can do with files, once you make a file object, let's do this. So we'll say enter the name file to read. We'll have a string for file name. Keyboard.next line. And so instead of saying keyboard, oh, it's my scanner. I didn't have a scanner. Grab that one out here. There we go. So instead of saying, hey, it's always in test.txt, I can ask you. And say, okay, sure. Here, you give me a file name. I'm going to make a file. Then you can ask the file object. So the file class here has a method, file2read.exists. No, exists. There we go, that one. So if it exists, then we can go open it, do all of our cool things here. Otherwise, we'll say there is no file by that name. Right, give it a little format. So you can do a quick little sanity check using the file class that we use and say, okay, hey, if it's there, go and read it. Otherwise, we're just going to crash. And you could handle the exception here, but again, exceptions are meant for exceptional circumstances. If you can check and avoid it, check and avoid it because exceptions are slow. It pauses the everything that's running and has to do this whole other process behind the scenes. So they're slow. So if we can just do a quick little if else, let's do a quick little if else. So we'll say, okay, what file should we read? Come on. So test. Oh. Oh goodness. Oh. There's a folder named test, right? In our, I didn't give it an extension, usually like .txt for text files. Let me try that one other time, like test. There is no file by that name. There was a directory named test was my problem here in that folder. But if I say test.txt, great, we get, we read our fluffy out of there, right? So you can ask if the file exists is really handy, really cool. Or you can make a new file if it doesn't exist with that file object. Okay, that country's file is a file object. We can make a new file out of it using that file class if you want. It'd be empty, but sure, we could do that if you wanted. Okay, so that's their approach to do all that. So his little app here, like, hey, do you want to list the countries? Do you want to add a country or do you want to exit? Makes a country IO. That's what we were just looking at. And then we'll call those methods here, right? We have an array list. Sure. You can get them, you can print them, do all those things. So that's another approach. And either is perfectly fine. If you like print writer to buffered writer to file writer, that's fine. And if you don't want to use scanner, you can use the buffered reader given a file reader, where we did a file to a scanner. Both will work. Perfectly fine. Just whatever approach you want to go for is okay. But you'll see all the examples from Murrock are the buffered reader and file reader versus the file and scanner that we just did. So I like the scanner object because we can ask it if it has next. I think this is kind of a little bit of a nicer approach rather than if something's not null. But is there something for me to read? Great, let's go keep on reading. So scanner is pretty cool. You can do a lot of fun things with scanner. We've used that package before, so not too big of a deal here. All right, what do you guys think so far about arrays? Or, oh goodness, I just saw the word array. File, input and output. One of those days, friends. One of those days. Not too bad? Okay, so we're going to do a similar idea here. We're going to go build on this idea that I can keep stuff in memory and then write it to a file, and when I run my program again, I can go read out whatever I had in here. So we're going to build a little storefront where I can either manage my store, right, or I can come in and buy things from my store. So the store is going to keep a list of an object or a list of instances of this class for item, which has a name, a price, and then a quantity on hand. Right? So like, hey, I have 15 Diet Cokes in my store. Sure. And I sell them for $2.15 because it's outrageous. And I really should know better and just go get 6 packs at Kroger. But I forgot because I'm lazy. So we'll have items that we're going to write to a file doing this kind of approach, this just text-based, hey, I will write them, put them like tilde separated things, and then I can add items. So you have to ask for the name, you have to ask for the cost, you have to ask for the quantity. Like, how many did you just get in? Great. And then when someone wants to buy an item from your store, we reduce the quantity, and we need to tell them what the total cost was. Right? All right. Let's go to project 4. Oh, we need a classroom link for that. Generate a classroom link real quick. 1500, here we go. Oh, 2021, project 4. Got a template. Pull requests. All right. This is project 4. So this will be due in 2 weeks, right? By 6 p.m. so we can talk about it, start a class. Item for project 4 in projects. And then, how many points was project 3? I can go back and look and see if you got that handy. 14. So this will probably be somewhere around 18 or so points worth. Submit the feedback, pull request URL, self-assessment using the rubric. All right. So again, 2 parts. So write a 2-part program. It allows the user to manage their store. Right, that's part 1. Or someone to buy from the store. Part 2. Okay, so when it starts up, like, hey, do you want to manage your store or do you want to sell stuff? Right. So in the manage store portion, read the items.txt file to load an array list of type item into memory. And then give options to the user to manage item, right? Manage item is an existing item, right? Ask for the item name and allow them update the price or quantity, and I guess both, right? And or quantity. So like, hey, I want to go and manage my Diet Coke. Okay, go find in that array list of items which one has the name Diet Coke, and then say, okay, what's the new price? What's the new quantity? And probably even tell them, like, here was the existing price, here was the existing quantity here. So we'll, give existing values when prompting for new ones. Okay, an option to add item. So that asks for name, price, and quantity, and an option for remove item. Right, you can remove an entire item from the array list. And if we don't want to sell it anymore, it's the item of the array list. After each item choice, sure to update the items.txt file. So make sure you're updating every time. So like when they update an item, you're going to rewrite the entire file. It's very inefficient, but again, we don't really have a better way to do it right now. So don't worry about it. Not a big deal, right? The better way, and we don't even actually get a chance to get into the second Java course, unfortunately, is using a database. Right? Databases are made for storing data. We're sort of doing it the poor man's way, because that's what we're practicing, right? Just to be honest. The real world, almost everything's stored in the database, but there are still lots of use cases for local files, but databases are good at lots of things as well. Okay, so our manage then, right? We can manage an item, right, which is like updating the quantity or the price. We can add an item, or we can remove an item. So those 3 choices in our manage store for the sell stuff option. That's part 2. Allow the user to enter the name of an item they want to buy. Actually, it might be easier to do it a different way here. I'm having thoughts now, but that's okay. Yeah, okay. Let's change this up here. So instead of this array list, because that's a little bit obnoxious here, let's not do that. Is that okay? Let's do it this way. We're going to have options to manage an item, ask for the item name, allow them to update the price and quantity, give the existing values. So for managing an item, you're going to try and open a file with the name of the item. So each item we sell will be saved in a file with that item's name, .txt. Right, so this way we're going to write every item out as a separate file. I think this will make reading things a little bit easier, because then there's just the one line of that file to read. Okay. So ask for the name of the item. So the name of the item. open the name of that file item. So see if that exists. So, hey, I want to manage Diet Coke. Go look for dietcoke.txt. If it exists, great. Then we can update the price and quantity, give them the existing values, and then rewrite that file. We open it, try and read it out, tell them what's in it, and then they give us new values. We'll update that file. To add an item, there's no array list here then. This will be easier. Create a new file with the name of the item as the file name plus .txt, and write the price and quantity to the file. And remove item deletes the file with the item name. So to delete a file, we haven't actually done that one yet. We can delete. So once you go and see if that file exists here, right, we can say file to read .delete. And delete will delete a file. Right, so don't do that if you're about to read it here, but like that's how you delete a file. So if you're going to remove something from your inventory, great, I no longer sell Diet Coke, let's get rid of it. Okay, so updating finds the file, reads the current values to tell them what the current values are, and then updates it or just overwrites with the new price and quantity. So you can put like price on line 1, you can put quantity on line 2. You don't even have to worry about doing any of that split stuff. So I think this is probably easier than trying to do writing stuff in an array list where they're all split by characters. I guess either approach is probably fine, but I think this will be easier for you than trying to manage with that array list. Okay. And then there's no having to update that file every time. So this will be more efficient as well. So we don't have to write, if I've got 500 items for sale, I don't need to rewrite 500 items every single time. I can just update that one item file that you have. So we're going to end up with a lot of files, right? That's fine. You can sell Coke, you can sell Diet Coke, you can sell Sprite, you can sell Diet Sprite, you can sell Cherry Coke. I don't know, there's like vanilla Coke. There's like 50 different kinds, right? So all sorts of fun stuff. Or food, I mean, anything they want to sell, right? If they want to sell cheeseburgers, you'd have a cheeseburger.txt file with the price and then the quantity. Sure.
So they're like a certain amount of files.
So you're letting them create them themselves.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yep. So there's no like number you need to have in here. Like when they go and manage their store, we're just going to make files for every item that they have.
Okay.
Look for a file that name exists. Tell them the price. Ask how probably the price and quantity. How many they want to buy. They want to buy more than you have quantity of. Tell them they can't. Right, so when we go say, hey, do you want to buy Diet Coke? If I only have 10 in the machine and they want to say, I want to buy 15 Diet Coke, tell them they can't do that. Otherwise, tell them the total price and ask them to enter their payment information. Just fake numbers, like just ask them to enter something. Like, hey, enter your card number or enter your Bitcoin address. Or, I mean, anything silly, right? It doesn't matter what they type in. We're going to ignore it anyway. But like, we're going to pretend there's a transaction here. And thank them for buying something at your store. Allow them to keep buying more things until they are done. Right? If it exists. So if it doesn't exist, right? File doesn't exist. Tell them you don't sell that. Sell that and allow them to keep trying, buy stuff, right? So if I have a Diet Coke.txt, great. Here, hey, thanks. You know, I'm selling Diet Coke for $2.50. I have 10 of them left. How many do you want to buy? And if I say 7, sure, okay, 7 times $2.50. Oh my goodness, 14 times plus 3, so is that $17.50? That sounds right. I picked bad numbers. Bad numbers. Yeah, $14 plus 50 cents times 7. That's $17.50. It is. It's got to be, right? $2.50 times 7. $17.50. I did the math right. Look at that. All right. So say, okay, great. Enter your payment information. Doesn't matter what I type. Just let me type something in. right? Whether or not it's a card number or a Bitcoin address or, sure, let's be silly. And then thanks for buying it. Do you want to buy more? Or if I don't have dietcoke.txt, I don't sell that. Do you want to try to buy something else? When they're all done, right? Sure, we're done. So starting off lets them make items, update items, and delete items. And then the other part is they could just buy stuff. So they don't need, you don't need to be able to switch between managing and selling, right? Just go into either mode. Manage mode, they can manage stuff until they're done, program ends. Or selling mode, they get to buy stuff until they're done, program ends. Either way is fine for that, okay? All right, so let's add a rubric. Oh, and yes, turn off file submission. This is text submission. There we go. Look at that, I remember this time. Let's add a rubric. So it's project 4. No, for the file IO stuff, we don't need to bother. For the class item, right? I mean, it just has a name and an item and a quantity. It's not really interesting. If you want, you can do all of this in a class. If you don't want to use a class, that's okay. You don't have to. You could write a class that lets you write it to a file. I think in this country's app, did he do that with? What is even console? No, that's ugly. This one was kind of silly too. I think one of his other examples, it takes an instance and that class can write itself to a file. If you want to go that route, great. If you just want to do it all in a main method, that's okay too. I think it would be harder that way, but as long as you get the job done, I'm okay with it here. Right, if you made an item class, then you could have a method for save to file. That would, open the file, write the file, close the file, and that would be the method. Just an option, but it's not too hard one way or the other. Missing and complete. Let's do, I think, 2 points each for that. So program has 2 modes, manage items and shop mode. In manage item mode, users can add new items. A new file is created with the name of the item, .txt, and the quantity and price are written. Right, manage item mode, users can update existing items, display the current quantity and price. I'm going to double up on the manage one. That one's a little bit harder here. So you just 2 points for displaying the current value, and then new values for quantity and price are written. Right, so 2 points for reading it out, and then 2 more points for updating it back. Then manage item mode. Users can delete item files. Right, so it's 10 points. I guess that's 8 for manage, 2 for having the 2 modes. And then in shop mode, users can attempt to buy anything they want. File doesn't exist. Tell them you don't sell it. Right, so anything they type in, we'll add the .txt to, and then go see if there's a file of that name. Right? Does dietcoke.txt exist? Does buffaloburger.txt exist? I don't know, right? Does soybeans.txt exist? Anything they want to give us, we'll go look it up and see if it exists. That mode, if the item does exist, display the price and quantity on hand. And then shop mode, allow the user to enter a quantity to buy. Don't allow them to buy more than you have for sale. And ask for pretend payment info. Right, and then shop mode, continue allowing them buy items until they get bored. Okay, I think that's 18 points there. Again, we don't get to forget any of the stuff we've done before. I think this would be easier if you used classes, but I won't hold you to it for this one. Either one should be fine. So when I solve it, I'll use a class for item, right? Because it's going to have the name, the quantity, and the price, and we'll use all of that stuff. But sure. All right, does that make sense? We get everything out of our our description here? I think so. I forgot to watch chat here, friends. I'm sorry. Yep, okay, no one was chatting at us anyway, so that's fine. I guess everyone online got bored. All right, we've got the rest of the night to get started on this. Again, next week will be a little short. There's not too much we need to cover about exceptions other than this is what we can do with them in our classes and how we should handle things like that. We can go from there. Yeah, so we'll do a quiz on chapter 11. I will tell you, I will drop your lowest quiz. So like if one of them you didn't do so well on, don't sweat it too much, because I'll get rid of that lowest score when grades are finally computed. But we'll do a quiz on that one. I don't think we'll do a quiz on exceptions, so we're not going to cover enough of it to really make it worth it. And then we'll do one last quiz on Java FX stuff. And so we're only going to have those two last quizzes. We'll do all the file I/O stuff tonight. You know what? We're not even doing the binary files, though. Should we just skip it? Do we want to take a vote? Should we just skip the file I/O quiz because we're not doing anything about binary files? I got one vote for yes. Okay. Sure. So we'll skip it. So we'll forget it. So we won't do a quiz on file I/O. We won't do a quiz on exceptions. We'll do one last quiz when we get to Java FX. And we'll call that good. And I will drop your lowest. So if you're happy with your quiz scores and you don't want to take the FX quiz, fine. You can just have that one be your lowest dropped. But if you want to have a different one dropped for your lowest, make sure we'll take this one, the 16th, and we'll call that good. All right. Again, so next week, a little bit shorter. We'll have more work time for Project 4. And then the week after that, we'll get started with Java FX and the final project. If you do want to pair up, great. If you want to do it individually, that's cool too. We can make it work either way. And then supplemental Java FX time, work time. If you want to show up, great. If you don't want to show up, that's okay too. But I'll have that whole night to sit and work with you folks on the final projects, get them into your final working shape. Ideally, you're done by 12/7, so you can focus on your other final exams. And then all we have to do for this class is you just play your game for us. You're like, okay, sure, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And we all say, cool. I used to do pizza, but that's frowned upon given our global pandemic. So at some point, I'll owe you a pizza when this is all done and over with. So we can go from there. So yeah, hopefully you're done by 12/7. That's the goal. Like before you walk out on 12/7, or maybe you've got like one or two last like checklist items. Like, okay, let's fix this last little thing here. Do whatever you want there. That's the goal. And then you have less stress on final exam week for all the other classes, because all you have to do is show me your project that's already done. And we can go from there, okay? All right, awesome. Let's see. I don't know, is there anyone around? Well, probably not anyone watching right now that raid. So we'll call that a night on the stream. Think about it when you get a chance for me. When I used to run classes, I would do a weekly lab, and like you would practice the thing we did that week as like a really small assignment, and just you could get it done by the time you walk out for some points. I got rid of that in the pandemic, and I didn't bring it back in this flex format because I thought that would also cause a little bit of headache. But let me know if you think that'd be useful or not. Just kind of think about that. Just not like anything project size at all. Just like, hey, do something that shows you can do the thing we talked about, lab style. So.
I'm considering it would be done by the time. Or it would be due by the time of the week.
Because it's also async. Like it'd be due before class starts the next week. In case, if you're watching async, great. You can just do it anytime in the week. Or if like, I don't know, people used to sit and stay, and we'd work till 10 like every night when I taught, like because I would teach night classes all the time. And that just hasn't happened. And I don't know if people are just burned out and don't want to stay for 4 hours, or like after you've been sitting here for 2 hours listening to me, you're just tired and want to go home, because I get it, right? Like it's already a lot, but it feels different since the pandemic. We're not just going to sit here till 10 and do stuff. So I don't know. So it's like a little lab assignment almost, you might call it. Like, here's a quick little lab, just do this and demonstrate you did the thing. I used to do them, but okay, just a thought. So think about it, let me know, and take care.